What's up, people? I just watched the video that Mudkip put out about his petition to for Jagex to bring back 2007 RuneScape servers, since we learned that they are gonna be hosting a demo version for RuneFest players at the upcoming RuneFest. So I watched the video, of course, and I liked a lot of what he said. So I wanted to give my own perspective on this idea, since it's something that comes up, I think, fairly often these days. The idea of OSOSRS has come up for a number of years at this point. But each time I feel like maybe it gets a little bit less unserious, a little bit more serious. Because I don't think anyone can argue at this point that OSRS is 2007 Scape, despite what the subreddit is named. It's like, I mean, it's been out for 13 years. It's a different game than it was. And a lot of the comments in this video are basically just like, it wouldn't get enough players, it would die quickly, and people don't care enough, basically. Which I don't think that they're necessarily wrong. I don't like, especially if a version of 2007 RuneScape that just was released exactly as it is and got no updates whatsoever, aside from fixing critical bugs and banning bots or whatever. Uh, I agree that it wouldn't retain a huge player base long term, but I also think that that is not important. It's not what the idea of it is about in the first place. The idea is just preserving the history of the game, and that's not something that has to be profitable, like not everything in the world has to be about money. And particularly, I guess I don't really understand why so many players use this argument of like, it won't be profitable enough for Jagex, therefore it shouldn't be done. Like, why do you care about how much money Jagex makes? I don't give a shit how much money Jagex makes, as long as they continue offering the game. Like, the only reason they're trying to make so much money is because they have investors breathing down their neck, because the Gowers decided to sell the company and it's been sold a million times over since then, and has never been owned by somebody who actually cares about the game ever since the Gowers sold it. That's why they care about money. We don't have to care about their money. That's not our prerogative, that's theirs. But of course, Jagex would be the ones that would be offering this, because they are the ones who have the original game saves. So they, who are unfortunately motivated by money, have to be the ones that decide to do this. That being said, I don't think that most of the developers that work at Jagex are motivated by money. I think most of them actually love the game a lot, but unfortunately, investors have power and employees don't. So this is the state of the world. This is the state of many other games and many other industries. It's not just RuneScape and Jagex that suffers under this system. But I do think that there is an argument to be made about why something like this is not a bad idea, even from a financial investor perspective to this game. And the first thing I would say is that by offering this level of history of the game, of putting this level of effort into preserving the game and showing it off to the world, it's a demonstration that RuneScape is something that is important enough to be preserved. And that changes public perception. When people see that people care about something so much that they need and want it to be preserved in this way, to have this level of detail about every single version of it that has existed throughout history, it shows that people care a lot about your product and will be interested in it and engaging with it for years to come. And that is kind of a snowball effect. When people see that, people feel inspired by it and they start to feel more passionate about it as well. So, maybe that's a little bit hypothetical, but I do think that putting a high degree of effort and quality into your product and caring a lot about its history is something that shows and that people see and care about. And you see that across a lot of industries. Like, most companies that have been around for long enough, they have a kind of return to their roots moment where they want to look back and preserve their old products exactly as they were. You see it a lot with cars, which is an industry that I am curious about and follow. You see it with all kinds of different companies. So I I think the RuneScape is important enough and is a valuable enough piece of internet history, popular culture, and still a really fun game that holds up in current day that is worth putting this level of effort into preserving its history. And really, the level of effort is not very high for Jagex, but it all depends on how they offer it, and that's where I have kind of some qualms, I guess, because so what Mudkip is proposing is that they host a permanent version of the August 2007 backup that they have, which, as far as we know, is the oldest backup they have other than RuneScape Classic. And as far as we know, they only have the latest version of RuneScape Classic from the end of 2003, and then they have nothing between then and August 2007. And there was some buzz about how Ash noticed that Andrew Gower used to take tapes of the game away to his home every week. So maybe there's a chance that it is preserved. But if Andrew Gower doesn't have it, then I don't think anybody has it. And Andrew Gower is probably not legally allowed to have it. So if he does, he probably will not say so. So what Jagex has to work with in terms of backups is pretty slim, at least from the mid 2000s era, which some people would say is the golden ages of RuneScape prior to the removal of free trade in the wilderness, which was in late 2007. I imagine they probably have more backups between 2007 and later. I guess what people will probably be interested in is before EOC from that time period. And it would be very cool if they offered those also. The question is really whether they should host all of these as live servers that would be around forever, or whether they should offer them in some other form. I'm going to use Minecraft as a point of comparison here because I think Minecraft does a pretty good job of preserving their history. As far as I know from the official Minecraft launcher, you can launch practically every version of Minecraft ever made. I think it has some issues with the really early versions, and there have been community run projects to improve those. But basically, you can play just about every single version of Minecraft, and I'm not an expert, but I believe that you pretty much always have been able to. Now, there's some obvious differences between Minecraft and RuneScape. Of course, Minecraft is a offline single player game that can be played with a group of people on a server, but is definitely not an MMO and is a self-hostable game first. Whereas RuneScape is an MMO and the servers have only ever been hosted by Jagex and the server source code has never leaked. So there's some obvious differences between the two, but I think that a lot of the problems that people raise with the idea of offering preservation servers are mostly around the idea of offering them as servers that Jagex hosts. They could very easily distribute N versions of the game, however many versions of the game they can offer that they have backups of, as versions that people could host themselves and play locally, either single player or host their own servers that however many people could play. And that removes all of the work from Jagex of maintaining the servers and doing the community, the customer support and the billing and all that other stuff, and still accomplishes the goal of preserving the history of the game, and also opens an entirely new avenue for what the game could be. And I know that this was something they sort of explored already with Project Zenaris, which was basically they were going to offer like the ability for people to host their own servers and customize a bunch of parameters of it, and it would be based on the old school RuneScape engine. As far as I know, there was no plans to offer like older versions of the game. With that, it was mostly just to be able to host your own leagues, basically, and be able to like add crazy items or like fuck with your XP rates a lot. So that was something I'm sure they could reuse a lot of the foundations of that, but it's not exactly what I would hope to see from a historical preservation perspective. But I do think it's something that is really feasible in current day with current day technology. It would definitely be possible for them to distribute both the client and the server without having the server be easy to reverse engineer, which is probably something they're concerned about. I mean, many games are single player and you download them on your device, and most of them have not been seriously reverse engineered, and there's a whole legal system, legal framework, and industry around this concept, so it's not anything new. And it opens the doors to a whole new world of what RuneScape could be, which is people creating their own servers with their own custom content. And I mean, look at what Minecraft has become by allowing people this level of flexibility. It would also be it could go hand in hand with offering like APIs for modding and plugins and all that kind of stuff. But that is a whole other topic to discuss. But I think this concept of being able to distribute the client and server for people to play with on their own device and not, they don't have to follow any rules. They can't break any live servers that anybody else depends on, uh, is something that would be really valuable for Jagex to look into and opens a lot of doors for them. Could kind of bring them into a whole new sector of the gaming industry. And when talking about all of this, it's hard to ignore projects like Lost City, which are historical preservation projects that are trying their best to reverse engineer the server code without any source code whatsoever, just by observing behavior over many tens of thousands of communal hours of developers and long-term players. And, this project is an absolute gold mine for Jagex if they were to find the right purpose for it. And it's totally open source. And I believe that the people who run this project are happy to work with Jagex. So I do kind of think that the only really long-term viable preservation server would be one that has some sort of progression. And that's basically what Lost City is that it progresses through the same timeline at a slower pace. So Jagex could very easily do something like this and just milk it for decades if they release the updates a lot slower. And that's just the fact that it has content updates and stuff happening for people to look forward to will keep people playing. I don't think it will have as many players as the modern game ever, but that's what people said about old school RuneScape when it first came out. So who knows what the future will hold. And with all this being said, I'm not really opposed to Jagex hosting permanent preservation servers of given calendar years or something. I think that would also be really cool. And maybe it would be simpler for them in the long term. I do think that the player counts would be relatively low in the long term, but there would still be dedicated active players for a very long time. I mean, this project is a private server that doesn't advertise at all, and it still has a consistent few thousand players per week. And if you have something that's officially offered by Jagex, you'd probably 10x that for the long term. So there's certainly a niche there, no matter what. And even just that niche is probably enough to cover the fairly minimal costs that it would take for Jagex to keep something like that running. But it's not flashy, it's not exciting, it's not something that attracts a lot of attention over time when you're just hosting a permanent old version of your game. What else is there to say? I think that's pretty much all the points I can make. I think that it is very important for Jagex to try to preserve the history of this game, and the more time passes, the more is lost. So time is of the essence. And if Jagex doesn't do it, other people already are. And people who care about this game so much are dedicating so many hours of their free time to try to accomplish the same thing. But Jagex are the only ones who could ever actually have the true source code and can do this with so much less work and effort than the community can. So I do think that Jagex has a responsibility to preserve the history of their game as much as they can, because they are the stewards of this game, they are the owners of this game, and they are the ones who should care about this game more than anybody else. And the players obviously care very much about the history of the game, so I think that Jagex should too, and they should demonstrate that to us. Because ultimately, RuneScape is really special. It's something that means a lot to hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people, and has been a huge part of a lot of people's lives for decades at this point. So I think it's only right that we do right by it, and treat it like the work of art that it truly is.